It's such a pleasure to have what's a guy who's become a good friend here of late. Prolific golfer in his own right. Now a broadcaster par excellence. Steve Scott on this On the Mark podcast, and video wise for the first time too. Steve, welcome, man. How are you doing?
It's always great to be with you, and I learned so many great new words when I get to talk to you. And I love the accent, whole thing. I can't wait. Can't wait to chat with you.
Yeah, why is it that people talk about the words I use? Anyways, using words and pictures. Let's put you into context, please. The Steve Scott I knew was the guy I watched on television who was this gritty competitor, who took Tiger essentially to the rack. You've got a book that you're releasing here shortly too. I want you to talk about. But for our global audience, please tell us a little bit about you and who you are and how you came to where you are right now.
Wow. Yeah. No, I had a pretty good amateur career. I was good kind of half a lifetime ago, and ran into Tiger Woods in that U.S. Amateur Final that I'm sure we'll chat about soon. But
Mhm.
yeah, I soon realized I played 6 years professionally and realized that my life it was going to be tough trying to make a living playing professional golf. So I became a PGA club professional. Got my Class A status back in 2007, and became a head professional in 2009. I carried a couple of head professional jobs at a couple traditional clubs up in the Northeast, New Jersey, New York, for about 9 years. And now I'm involved with a club that's a national golfing society that doesn't really own real estate. We just run events all around the country and have a great membership who really appreciates the game and the traditions of the game. It's called the Outpost Club.
All right.
And we've also developed a competitive offshoot of that called the Silver Club Golfing Society. So involved with that is like the broadcasting you mentioned. I've authored a book. I try to play competitively within the Carolinas PGA section. So a lot of balls juggled in the air, but I try to keep them all going the right direction.
Well, the common thread is golf. I want to ask you this. You know, a mentor, an advisor, and a coach to many. For the parents listening to this, they're like, "All right, we remember Steve. We know Steve. We've got this young man or this young lady, son, daughter, who's wanting to get into golf. Go to college. Perhaps you had the decorated career down there at Florida. The insights. How did you get into where you are? How did you get into the game first off? And then what's the insight you could share with the parents just listening to this about mentoring and maybe advising the young golfer in the family?
Well, great question. I think that whole arena has changed dramatically in the last in the last 25 years, with a lot of people getting involved with college placement
Mhm.
and all of that. For me, I just took to the game at a young age. My parents were members at a club only for a couple of years, so for most of my life, I was a public course kid. I grew up in South Florida, the Fort Lauderdale area, and just really took to the game. I guess I loved the individualness of the game because I didn't have to rely on somebody passing me the ball or
Mhm.
whatnot. And so I just kind of ran with it. And my parents were divorced when I was young. And really, I think that, that really played into me getting really diving into golf even more, because golf was really my friend at a certain point in my eighth grade year. We moved kind of far away. Moved with my mom and my stepfather. We moved to the northwest corner of Arkansas, of all places,
All
from
right.
from
Okay.
South Florida. And anyway, I didn't really have any friends there, and I was only there for a year, and so golf was really my friend. And so I really just dove into golf and started getting pretty proficient at it. My sophomore year of high school, I won the state high school championship in Florida against some really good competition. I did it again my senior year. But really, I guess to get to your question of how I got into it, really, I don't know, I just kind of dove into it. I love the competition. I think, and that's something maybe you can't teach. The competitive drive that a lot of junior golfers have really has to come from within. And sometimes I've seen parents in the past try to force that competition on their kids, and I have
Uh-huh.
kids now too. And so it's just one of those things where it's like I've kind of backed off almost on purpose, because I know that the competition's in my kids' blood. And so just kind of letting them do what they want to do. But it really can't be forced on by the parents. I think that's probably the biggest lesson. And it's, it's kind of difficult, right?
Oh, but
It's
you,
difficult to hold back, but
yeah, it is. I'm sitting here as a fellow dad as well, and I've got a daughter who plays nicely. And so I'm going to back that observation of yours up with another question to say, look, you let them be. I know the tightrope you're currently walking right now because of the competitor within. I know it's must be hard to stand on the sideline and yeah, and not get all G'd up and be more father than competitor. Am I right in this?
it is. It is. It's really a conscious thing for me to just kind of to back off a little bit, try to spoon feed some things. But I think that's the biggest thing is just, support your kids and support them but make sure you don't cross that line of being pushy. And if they're going to gravitate towards it, if they have it within them to do it, they will do it. And that's really how I got into the game. And I just kind of went that way. And I just loved the competition. I loved being able to challenging myself, trying to beat my own personal best score.
Hmm.
Every day I went out there trying to make one more birdie or hit one more drive a little farther, and beat some older kids at that point when I was young. And I think that's the stuff that comes from within. And for me, it was just kind of this innate sort of thing that allowed me to go out there and compete at a high level at a relatively young age. And that US Amateur I played in the finals against Tiger, I was 19 years old. And really backpedaling before that, a year prior, I got to the semifinals of the US Amateur at Newport Country Club as well.
Hmm.
And I was 18 years old. So yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. I love digging out the short game. I loved all the challenge of the game and just trying to get better every day.
You talked about unlocking the competitor within, and I sense that when I'm in your presence. I love you exude, the just the competitive aura about you. Um, I want to look at the shadow side of that a little bit and help the competitive golfer listening to this because your career and your resume speaks for itself. The how, Dealing with the letdown. The success is one thing. I want you to talk a little bit about and advise the folks listening to this, the competitors, whether they're just competing for their member guest or for some collegian, maybe, vying for the NCAs or whatever the case might be. Um, Dealing with the letdown of it, because golf, that's inevitable. I want you to advise us and maybe share a personal anecdote because I'm sure there were many. Well, let's go to that match in '96. Tiger pulls the rabbit out of the hat. You enormously benevolent, asking him to move his ball mark back, and that's the origin of your book. So let's talk about dealing with a letdown of the failure in golf.
Well, that's a great perspective too, because unfortunately in golf, you are going to win a heck of a lot more than or excuse me, you're going to lose a heck of a
Yeah.
lot more than you win.
Hmm.
I mean, even the great Tiger Woods, what he had, at the best, professionally, he had a 20% win percentage, or maybe I'm getting my percentages wrong, but you're going to lose an awful lot. It's kind of like baseball, right? If you're a 300 batter, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame, but that means you strike out 7 times out of 10.
Yeah.
So you're going to fail a heck of a lot more in the game. And so, yes, you have to be prepared to not win. You have to be prepared to lose graciously because it's going to happen a lot. And so it's going to happen. You have to be almost ready for that more than the victory. And
Hmm.
you see that in a lot of players who win. Sometimes it's almost like they're surprised that they do win. But at the same token, I think that I don't know. I guess and maybe I'm going off on the other tangent here, but I think that when people win, or like when you have to go out there trying to win, I think.
Yeah.
And because I think there's people that, hey, if I'm satisfied with a top 10 or a top 20, you don't take the risks that are involved with winning. You have to. I look back at every win that I've had as a junior golfer or as a collegiate or a professional. And there was 1 or 2 shots that I look back and say, why the heck did I do that? Like the statistics didn't really say that I should pull that shot off, but
All right.
my goal was to win. And so I really, I had to take that risk, but with that risk comes the responsibility of owning up to a mistake if you don't pull it off. And so you have to, I guess, appreciate those risks that you take. And and be ready to succumb to the failure if it doesn't get that way. But I think the failure is certainly a part of it. It's not the fun part of it, but it's the unfortunate reality of golf, because there are so many competitors that you play against every time. And I think that's, for me, that's why I was better in match play as opposed to stroke play, because I only had to beat one other guy. And so,
Hmm.
making it to the finals of the US Amateur for me maybe didn't seem so difficult, because every day I only had to beat one person.
Yeah,
I don't
gotcha.
have to beat 155 other players. And so maybe I answered your question, maybe I didn't, but
No, no, you certainly did. But I've got thousands of questions that are now bobbing around in my head. What I do want to ask is the failure you reference, and you talk about, the taking on the risk required to hit that shot, that might be necessary to pull off the victory. What about the did the after the letdown of it, that picking oneself up, did you give yourself like a time to bemoan the fate, or just kind of, feel a bit sorry for yourself, or whatever the case might be, and then say, okay, that's that, now I got to look forward? Or was this just a natural thing with Steve Scott, just the competitor within's like, okay, well, I got beat, I'm out to get the next guy?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think specifically talking, touching on that 96 US Amateur, where everybody knew that, hey, that I didn't win. I was the runner up that day.
Hmm.
I guess for me, I took the positives away from it as much as I could. Certainly it was a, it was a bummer not to capture that Havermeyer trophy that I had, one hand on, or even more, really. But, you
Yeah.
know, it was, I took the positives away from it. Number one, when I was going into the finals of that USAM, I knew that I was playing in the Masters. I knew I was going to at least get an invite into the Masters the next spring. So that was a total victory in
Hmm.
itself. And then I was, soon after that match, like later that day, I was named to the World Amateur team for the United States. So I got to represent my country with three other guys. That was a total victory there. I ended up getting invites into numerous PGA Tour events because of that moment. So there was, other than winning the event that day, for me, there were so many positives that came out of it. And I think even just the average event that you don't win, doesn't have to be the US Amateur that you finish runner up at or finish top 10. I think you always have to take those positives. If you're going to play this game for a long time, have the longevity that all the golfers want who play competitively, you're going to have to always look at those positives and move forward. Because if you're looking back, I think it's the Dustin Johnson sort of mentality. Just like, he probably doesn't remember what he ate for breakfast, like
Just
it
keep
just, he
looking
just
nowhere.
puts it,
Uh-huh.
he just goes forward. And I think
Yeah.
if everybody could take the Dustin Johnson approach to the mind game, I think that's probably the best advice that I could give. Never look back, always look forward, always take the positives of what you did if you are happen to looking back. But
Mm.
you have to look at it that way, because if you look at it from a defeatist standpoint, you're going to be defeated pretty quickly.
Hey, I was lucky to work alongside you calling the 21 World Golf Championships Dell match play. And you're the match play expert, and I was, the stand-in host when I wasn't doing my analyst jobs. And you made that point at one stage, and I remember it sort of sitting with my spirit, and you're like, all right, every hole. Now we're talking match play for folks here. Now stroke play, it's essentially the same deal if you think about it, but every hole's its own contest. And then once the contest is done, it's onward. And there's no looking backward. And I was like, man, this is the truth. And you said it so beautifully. Let's build on that a little bit more, because I think even for the stroke play folks listening to this, there's this beauty, like Dustin Johnson, you point out, of always being mentally one step ahead and not ever looking in the rear view, right?
So here's the picture that all of the players, when you play golf, this is what you have to visualize. When you leave the green, you hole out your putt, you're walking off the green. You have to picture that there's a door right off of the side of the green. You open the door and you close it and you walk through it. But
Mhm.
by the time you get to the next tee, there's a little bit of gap in between that green and that tee. Once you get to the next tee, there's another door, and you open that door up, and then you close that and you move on to the next hole. And by that time you can't look back. You can't see through those doors that you just went through. And now you move forward. And I think that that's the visualization of that practice of just, whatever it is that you just have to close that door and move on. And, again, learn from what you did. If you made a dumb mental mistake, certainly, write that down in your notes and utilize that for future reference. But don't take the negatives and don't look back at, man, I should have done this, or I three putted 2 holes ago and I'm going to three putt again or something. It's an easy mentality and mindset to get in, but the positivity and that closing the door is something you have to mentally practice. That's what the sports psychologist would say. And you utilize that, because golf, I think most golfers think that, man, if I have this picture perfect golf swing, and we see it all the time on social media, people putting beautiful golf swings on social media, and you're like, why doesn't this guy win? And you wonder why they finished 30th in the tournament. It's like, because golf swing and the technique itself is only one spoke of the wheel, or only one piece of the pie. And so you if you understand it in that respect, and you understand the mental game is as or more important than the beauty of the physical game, man, now you've really got something. And I think that's, if you look at my golf swing back in 1995, 1996, technically it wasn't anything that was special. But what got me through those moments, and what got me to tackle the greatest player of our generation in Tiger Woods, was just that the heart and the guts and the never wavering desire to win. And I think that's really what carried me.
I'm writing feverishly here right now, and I raised my hands earlier when you were talking about that subject, because it is so true. And I want to, because I want to talk about, in your opinion, the keys to being a good competitor. That's how we're going to help the listener and the viewer to this now. But I want to, let's go and visit 1996, Pumpkin Ridge. The final of the U.S. Amateur Match Play. Tiger Woods is on the doorstep of his professional career. Hell, you guys had a gallery there that rivaled anything, anywhere. So let's reminisce a little bit. Walk us through the day a little. But before you do that, I want to. You had the big lead after 18 holes. Then he chips away a little bit, and then you pitch in the shot on 10. To this day, I can still remember. I mean, you were essentially had nothing there, and you pull the rabbit out of the hat. You knock this thing down. They pan to him, and he sort of almost doesn't flinch, but they keep the camera on you and your girlfriend, now your wife, right?
Yep.
You guys go and stand on the side of the green, and I remember you going, and you took this big breath, and they zoomed in on your face, and you sort of looked up at the heavens as if to say, what the heck, And then I could see you going, okay, and you were trying to sort of calm yourself down so you could go through that next door. I mean, am I reaching over here, or was this the truth?
No, not reaching at all. No, I mean, I think at that moment, the amount of adrenaline that went through my body at that one moment. I mean, I was wearing these heavy leather FootJoys, and I felt I jumped higher than Michael Jordan. Like I was, my feet were so light, and I was able, man, I just jumped through the roof. And yes, it's this surge of electricity that goes through your body. It's kind of like that flight or fight response that you get in a danger situation or a pressure situation or something, where, man, you have to calm yourself down, because if you don't, because you have to, in golf, you can't go tackle somebody or check somebody into the boards. Like, you have to execute a golf shot in finite moments. And so, yes, you have to just kind of take that breath and get your heart rate back to somewhere where it's calm, because if you don't, you're probably going to pass out.
What a thrill. Okay, let's go to the night before. You win your semi. You look at the draw and you're like, I got Tiger Woods tomorrow. The preparation that goes into the day, I think there's so much that people can learn from this, because naturally, I would assume that Steve Scott is a little nervous. You obviously got a lot of anticipation going on. Talk about the preparation the night before leading into the final.
Well, it was a total mind preparation. I mean, that's all it was. Physically, my game was totally on point. I mean, the hole looked as big as a peach basket. I was rolling it great. I was hitting the ball in the fairways, which you had to do. We had thick USGA rough. It was just that perfect USGA setup, firm fairways, firm greens running at least 12 on the stem. And but it was a mindset that I needed, and I had a really serendipitous pairing about 8 months before. I played with Tiger in a collegiate event at Palmetto Dunes near Hilton Head,
Mm-hmm.
and we were paired together. And I watched his game. We both played. It was the final round of the event, and he went and shot 2 under par. It was a piece of cake, and I shot 80. And the reason why I shot 80 that day was because I was caught up in his game. I was watching these towering 3-irons from 250 over ponds to par fives that I couldn't even sniff. And so I'm like, man, like I was really caught up in watching him because I'd never played with him before. I wanted to see what this Tiger Woods was all about, and
Mm-hmm.
I got to see it. And so fast forward 8 months later to that USAM final. I mean, the strategy that night was all about not watching him hit a golf shot. I mean, I would literally look up in the trees. I would look at the ground. I wouldn't watch him hit a golf shot. The only thing I might watch was maybe for a wind direction and you certainly couldn't avoid the sound of his golf ball coming off the driver. It was like a gunshot,
I
right?
remember you
So,
talking about that. Yeah.
oh, I mean, so anyway, that was my mindset. And then, I get to that morning and we're walking down the first hole. And so I learned a lot. It was really interesting. If any of your listeners have watched The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan thing in the last year, that 10-part series, one of the things that I really took from that I look back on mine that I used to my benefit was what Jordan always did was he would try to find motivation. Even if motivation wasn't ever present, he would try to find something and tap into that to fuel the fire in his
Mm-hmm.
belly and at every point during the game. And so for me, I did that instinctively. So I was walking down the first hole, 7:15 in the morning. We both tee off, hit the fairway, and walking down the first hole. He's about 15 yards ahead of me. I turned to Christy, my girlfriend, now wife, like you mentioned, and I said, hey, he doesn't have a sports psychologist caddying for him, who had Jay Brunswick, who had caddied
Yeah.
for him in
Mm-hmm.
all of his previous USGA victories. And he was his buddy, Brian Bell from high school. And I said, I turned to Chrissy, I said, he doesn't have a sports psychologist caddying for him. I'm going to crush this guy. He doesn't have his security blanket with him. And that was my mindset. And I was dead sure that I was going to crush him that day because of that. And that's how I was able to play so well. I used something really that I just made up to fuel my fire. And I think a guy like Brooks Koepka nowadays does
Mm-hmm.
that. You play with that chip on your shoulder. I think that's a very important mindset to use when you're out there.
It's a 36-hole final for the folks who aren't familiar with it, same as the British Amateur. I believe you're 5 up going into the turn. Um, then there's an interesting anecdote I saw in one or other news clipping or something, where you and Christie went shopping in merchandising, and Tiger and all of his entourage were grinding away on the range. Tell us that story.
We did. Yeah. I mean, like I said, my physical game was so good. I mean, I was just on this autopilot playing so great. So I didn't have to, all I had to do was warm up for 10 or 15 minutes before we were ready to go back out. We had a 90-minute intermission, mind you, which is, and I go into this in the book a little bit, but that's, it's more than double than a Super Bowl halftime. And so
Yeah.
a lot of things can change in 90 minutes. But yes, for that story particularly, Tiger was off his game. His posture was off, and he had his whole team there, and he needed a whole team, and I had my girlfriend, right? And so and we said, hey, let's make sure we have something to remember this week by. And so she said, hey, let's go shopping. And it was a great way for her
Mm-hmm.
to try to get my mind off of that moment. She's always been a great sports psychologist for me, and she's an LPGA teaching professional herself to this day. But it was just that kind of that moment that I needed to get my mind out of the game and into something totally different just for a moment, because I didn't need to go practice. I mean, there was no need to do that.
Hey, okay, then you guys get back in the golf course. He steadily sort of chips away at your lead and narrows it to 2, I think it was, with 9 to go. And I remember in that broadcast you and I were on, where I spoke of playing with a big lead and how it's difficult. It's more difficult than people think, because you don't have that chaser's freedom, if you will. And we saw it in the Masters here in 2021, where Hideki had the big lead and didn't fumble it away, but things changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk about your mindset there as you're going along. You 5 up, all of a sudden you're 4 up, and then you 3. And
Yeah.
I want to tap into the competitor's mind over there. Share a secret or two on an insight, please.
I look back and say, look, because I'm 5 up and I shot 2 under par in the second 18. I mean, I played well. It's not like
Okay.
I bogeyed my way around and just let him in. I forced Tiger to pull Tiger things out of
Okay.
his hat,
Mm-hmm.
and he did. He shot 7 under par in that second 18, and we ended up going to 2 playoff holes. But so I didn't really give it away. But the mindset really going out. Look, if we just tie all the front 9, right? If I don't give him a hole, I'm going to be 5 up with 9 to play. I'm going to win that match.
Yeah.
And so Tiger came out really quickly, and he flagged a couple shots early on in that second 18. And I missed a par putt from like 5 feet on another hole. And then all of a sudden, you're right. I'm only 2 up.
Mm-hmm.
He chipped away really quickly. And so, and actually after through 9 holes, through that 27th hole of the match, he got it. He was only 1 down. He made a great birdie on the 27th hole.
Okay.
And then we had that back and forth fight. I hit that flop shot in. He holds a big eagle putt on the next hole. But yeah, playing with a lead is, you're right. You don't have that chaser's freedom, but you always have to, it's hard to trick your mind that, hey, just to try to keep the pedal down, because that in that point, halves of the hole, if you tie each hole, you're probably going to win that match. And so mathematics say you win. So
Yeah.
it's yes, there is a tension, because yes, that history is on the line for him, and he came out and played unbelievable, and I played pretty well.
You
And
said,
it's happened throughout the last 25 years with him and Phil Mickelson or VJ Singh or Ernie Els or whoever he came back and
yeah.
beat. But yeah, I mean, that was something that day.
You're so humble. I want to talk about the ball marking incident, but when we talk about the book, just to wrap this, but you talk about the Tiger things. He holed a couple putts there coming down the stretch, and the one was that just insane slider up and over a slope from outside of 40 feet. Had like, yeah. They panned to you, and you were
Oh
like,
man.
"Really? Are you serious?" And he's giving it the Tiger thing. Just
I
share
thought
this.
his arm was going to come out of its socket.
Quickly share the story. I can't remember what hole it was, but to this day, there's still the arm thing that he was doing
Yeah,
there.
that one. Well, yeah, it kind of goes and ties in with that birdie he made on the 27th, my flop shot on the 28th, and then he comes right back and holds this monster eagle putt that I'm in there about 3 feet for birdie. Like, it's a par 5,
Yeah.
and he hit this 6-iron up over the trees. It comes down like landed like a butterfly with sore feet on the green and the firm greens that were there, and he holds this putt. It had 3 or 4 feet of break, and the break was very late in the putt, and it was
It was
up and over
Morse.
this
Come on now.
hill.
I've just set it up as
I
10.
mean,
It looked like 10 for
it was nuts. This putt was a good 30-35 feet that he holed, and then he could have 3 putted half the time. It was that difficult of a putt, and yeah, he just kept doing that, and man, that one moment was pretty nuts. But yes, and he gave it the full, it was this punch counter punch sort of moment. I think that's what made that match so epic. It was this, not only had all these storylines, from my girlfriend caddying to Tiger going for history. I mean, it was this great play that you just like. It was this theater that you couldn't script it in a movie. You couldn't.
Yeah. It's worthwhile. I don't know if it's on YouTube. If it is, folks, you got to go check out 1996
Yes.
U.S. Amateur Final.
Yes,
I'm certain,
it's everywhere.
given its Tiger, I'm sure it's there. Okay, Steve. Before we talk about the book, I did sort of tee you up a little bit, just in terms of like headlines or subject headers or whatever. Just 3 for the listener. 3 takeaways to be a better competitor. Um, you don't have to dive into it. Just sort of just touch on each one. Number 1, do you have something like that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, you have to love the heat of competition. I mean, you
Okay.
have to love that. You can't shy away from that. Love being in the most pressure moment that you can be in. I think that you have to embrace that. If you don't embrace that, I think it's tough to be a top shelf competitor.
And does it get more comfortable the more you're in that environment? Because I know that is hugely uncomfortable for everyone the first time they're in there.
It is for sure. I mean, it's like anything. It's like being a great broadcaster, like you are. You have to get out there and get the reps, and you have
Mhm.
to, get in there and understand the flow of the broadcast, or the flow of the round, or the tournament itself. And so, the more that you understand that, the more that it becomes second nature. For sure. I know the first time I ever played in the U.S. Junior Amateur in match play, I was nervous out of my mind, and I didn't play my game. And then later on in match play, a couple of years later, I played very freely and very easily because I had that experience.
Okay. All right. So love the heat of competition.
Mm-hmm.
Two,
Yep.
number two.
Two, I guess it would be, I would say, play more than you practice. Get out
Oh, I
there on the
love
golf
that.
course
Hmm.
and get into, if you're practicing on the range, look, you have this pretty golf swing. Okay, it's only good for a flat lie. What happens when you have the uphill lie, or the downhill lie, or the golf, the round of golf? It's amazing. You could play a 72 hole tournament and not have the same situation or the same lie duplicated at all. The same break of a putt, the same speed of the green. One day you're playing the morning, one day you're playing the afternoon. So you have to get out there and play and understand the arena which your golf game has to adapt. I
Hmm.
think that that's the biggest thing that you can take away from that, and getting out, because practice, it only does you so much good, but getting out there to play, and in competition to play, I think is even better. But definitely play more than you practice.
I love that. And you're so right about, well, to me, in all of my experiences around the top golfers, watching them up close in the heat of battle, the ability to adapt, I think, is the biggest separator of all. Okay. Put a capstone on it. What's number three?
I would say, and this is from a long time of maturity, and now if I took my mindset back, if I can take my mindset I have now back to my 19 or 20-year-old days, I would say just be your own best friend out there. Be your own caddy. Give yourself so many pep talks and good positive messages all the time. When things aren't going well on the golf course, it's easy to get negative. It's easy to act in a negative way, or walk with your shoulders slumped, or have good positive uh, uh, body language. I think body language is huge. Walk
Mm,
with your shoulders up, your chin high, even if you've made 3 bogeys in a row. The cortisol, or the things that go through your brain
yeah.
when you have that positive body language are so beneficial that you don't realize. And so, be your own best friend out there, and do the things to keep your mind right throughout the play, because it's easy. Again, you're going to fail more than you succeed in this game, so you have to find ways to trick your brain to know that you're always succeeding.
You are preaching, brother Steve. Okay, folks, um, this was given to me a few weeks ago by the guy on the screen, Steve Scott. And it is a very cool ball mark. I keep it in my golf bag. And it was a little tease for your book. The writing's too small for me to read it out now, but the book debuts in the springtime. Quickly,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
I think the event, quickly tell us about the event. I've kept you for a long time, and tell folks where they can find the book, please.
Well, you can find the book is entitled "Hey Tiger, You Need to Move Your Mark Back,"
Hmm.
and it comes out May 18th. And you can go on movethatback.com right now and pre-order the book. And I've got a bunch of pre-orders coming in already, and
Oh.
I will
Mhm.
personally sign the book to whoever you want. And you'll also get a really cool. I've got a very similar ball marker to that I'll include in the purchase, kind of a commemorative marker. And so yes, hop on Move That Back, and keep abreast of my social media handles at SScottPGA on Instagram and Twitter, and you'll learn a lot about that. But movethatback.com, and get yourself in the pre-order queue, and get that book. It's really fun. It's great history lesson. Really, it's a great junior golf lesson. It's a great lesson for anybody who wants to really be reminded of the greatness of the game. And I think that that's in that moment was just that.
Okay, quickly, we need to send one to Tiger. Just kidding. The moment
Yeah.
on the golf course, what part of that match was it? Because Tiger, he was about to hit a putt without moving the ball mark back, and you did something that
Yeah.
would make Bob Jones, my hero, very proud.
Well, it's very kind of you to say. It was really an instinctive reflex action for me. It was the 34th hole of the match, and I was 2 up with 3 to play.
Yeah.
And the match was on the line. I win this hole, I win the match. And Tiger hit a great second shot in there. I missed the green in the bunker, pitched out of the bunker, and I had about a 10-footer for par, and he had a 6-footer for birdie. And I had to make my 10-footer to make his 6-footer mean anything. And I hold this great putt. I hit it dead center, made this par. I'm walking off the side of the green, and I noticed, because I had him move his marker because it was directly in my line. And I just noticed that not enough time had elapsed when I was walking off that green. And I kind of looked out of the corner of my eye and said, "Hey, you need to move your mark back." And he had to go stand up, go through the whole process. He was putting his golf ball down in the wrong spot. And anybody knows match play rules. If you play from the wrong
Lose the
spot,
hole.
you automatically lose the hole, and the match would have been over. And if you think about that for a second, right? It's not tooting my horn necessarily. It's tooting the horn of the game of golf, right?
Yeah.
It's the reason why we all love the game. It's the reason why we all listen to your podcast. It's the reason why we all watch golf incessantly, is because golf sits on this pedestal as compared to other sports, and we police ourselves. We call penalties on ourselves, or at least we should. And in that moment, the game was the honor of the game was upheld. And if it wasn't me, I would hope it would have been somebody else.
Well, bravo. Great job. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I appreciate your time and your insights, Steve. Quickly, the folks know where to go and get the book. Share the social media handles again one more time before I let you go.
Yeah, at Scott PGA on Instagram and Twitter, and so on. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, all those good things. But yeah, movethatback.com. Get your pre-order of the book, and yeah, get in there and learn a little about the history of the game.
Steve Scott, you're a gem, man. I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Mark.